For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And this evening, we're going to talk about Pretty Lights and an interesting tech company with Jonathan Labbée of SACO Technologies. And Jonathan literally travels all around the world. He was telling us he was helping set up, building infrastructure, lighting, and displays for NASDAQ and companies like that. I mean, really an incredible job.
The Burj Khalifa, that is this huge monster building in Dubai. But he did get his first start in the rock concert side. So we're going to hear about that shortly.
That should be a fun interview. So Jonathan Labbée of SACO Technologies up in a few minutes here on today's Entrepreneur. And then we'll chat with HR advisor Micheline Mayette about talent retention and acquisition. And we're also going to preview that event coming up on Thursday at JMSB, which is put on by you guys at FL. It's called Tomorrow's Workplace Today, and we'll have details on that as well later in the show. So that's Thursday evening, I believe, right, Josh, at JMSB?
It's actually Thursday all day. Full day okay. Workshop.
Excellent. So we'll get into those details. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. But first, news and notes as usual. And Canada Goose keeps rolling on. They have that marquee store in downtown Montreal now on Peel and St. Catherine. And I guess things are going well because they're expanding in Quebec.
And really, it's not a huge story, but I did want to highlight it because yes, they have their Ontario production facility, but they're growing leaps and bounds. They are a public company. They had their last quarter ending December 31st, had over $100 million of profit compared to a little over $60 million the year before in the same quarter. And they're expanding in Montreal. They build quality product. They are, Dan, and I'm a bit of a broken record on many things I know, but this was why do you go into a store? Why do you go buy? You need to give the consumer a reason to go in. They've been giving phenomenal reasons to walk into their store, whether it's a unique experience, whether it is a high-end product, whatever it is, they're giving great reason to go into the store. So I just wanted to highlight that, and I look forward to them producing here in Quebec.
And apparently they have a freezer at their downtown location, so you can try on the coats.
They do, and it's depending on the type of coat, so the thickness or whatever criteria they give for the coat, you can get into their freezer and not only experience cold, but experience wind chill, so blowing cold, and just to see how warm the coats are. Wow. And what level of coat you want. That's a unique experience.
For sure. Talking about the future of retail, and those experiences come up so often, and there's a really cool way to sell your winter coats. Amazon, they are perhaps headed towards. Is it going to be a conflict, do you think, with the Quebec government, or are things moving in the right direction here?
This is, I think, really preliminary, but the story caught my eye where there are rumors out there, and I don't think it's quite confirmed just yet, but rumors out there that the Quebec government wants to use private companies to store their data, I guess, from a privacy, from an encryption standpoint, where they're just much better equipped, because you think Amazon, and Amazon has all the money in the world to properly encrypt and protect the data. So, Quebec government, there are rumors, and this story came out in the Gazette, that the Quebec government might use Amazon to store its data. Now, this is very interesting, a little bit scary, a little bit 1984-esque, maybe a little bit from a private standpoint. There's part of me that appreciates it because the government understands and recognizes that it's actually quite difficult to protect privacy and data. And there's another part that says, what are they releasing? What information are they releasing? So I guess there's that component from a consumer aspect. If I think about it from an entrepreneurial aspect, all it means is if the government's worried about privacy, anybody that runs a business that collects data on their own customers or consumers or suppliers, whatever, they better really, really, really think about privacy, because this is an issue that has been around for many, many years and will become even that much more important in the future. If you're an entrepreneur holding information about your customers and suppliers, really, I hope you are protecting that data, encrypting it, whatever you got to do, because that can absolutely impact your reputation.
This story from Inc.com, this entrepreneur, one of these feel-good stories, going from $411 to her name in the bank to a $23 million flower powerhouse business.
Farm girl flowers. And really, there were a couple of articles I read that were south of the border, south of the 49th parallel, that really had similar messages. This is a real entrepreneur. She wanted to disrupt a market, flower industry. Who's disrupted the flower industry since FTD? It's been 20, 30 years in the making since the flower industry has been disrupted. And all she wanted to do was do something different. It hasn't been touched in so long. She took her $49,000 worth of life savings, invested it over 2 years, and just tried to do something differently. I don't think it was so much about the flowers themselves, because everybody has access to all the flowers, but it was how it was packaged and how it was maybe delivered and how it was a little bit extra touch. And I think that's where the message really comes out is, you want to start a business? That's great. Differentiate yourself. Find something. So she uses a small burlap sack to wrap around her flowers, and that's what distinguishes her, because as we all know, flowers, or at least as some of us know, and certainly after Valentine's Day last week, some of us know, not necessarily myself. Was a little remiss, but I won't go there. They're wrapped in cellophane, or they're wrapped in some type of paper. But this burlap sack was something that was a little unique. And she was down to her last dollar and kicked out of her apartment for working in her apartment, and then suddenly got this, somebody walked by and saw it and said, wow, you're the farm girl flowers. And she had this whole renown, this inspiration. She continued. Anyhow, it was a great story, but all to say, you got to do something a little different. So when I read this other article, and it was about Lenny and Larry's Complete Cookies.
I love this piece of advice.
And it's great. It's Lenny and Larry's Complete Cookies. And, I automatically read that and I think Felix Norton, because we've had them on several times in the show. But they were, they knew every aspect of their business. So there was a few things they said in there. One, along with the Farm Girl flowers, was be different. Find anything different. Whatever you can do, don't do the same as your competitor, because the chances of you flopping are astronomical. Do something a little different. But in addition to that, it's like they knew every aspect of their business before they even grew further. They became an expert in every single part about making cookies. It was something that absolutely and there was a whole bunch. It was basically a Q&A article that was sitting in entrepreneurial in entrepreneur.com, and it was, it was nice to hear that they always kept their feet on the ground. It was always nice to hear that they always wanted to do, and what they both said, guerrilla marketing. Right at the outset, they didn't have any money. They were pounding the pavement. They were leaving little samples here and there, and they were measuring, most important, they were measuring the effect of each little step of guerrilla marketing, because they couldn't afford to waste any dollars or time. So from an entrepreneurial aspect, from starting out, huge.
I have to say, one of the early lessons I learned in entrepreneurship was, if you can, as an owner, jump in there and do the job. If an employee is sick, or maybe on mat leave, or just maybe got something wrong, then yeah, that could cause you problems down the road.
It can. Listen, there's no better customer service when a consumer is dealing with the owner direct, a leader in the company. They feel that much more connected. So you can't do that all the time. If you grow to such a huge business, you can't do that all the time. But if you can, at least at the outset, be part of that customer service aspect, be part of that experience, I think that goes a hugely long way. So for all the startups out there, it's important to delegate. It's important to know what you don't know and give away. But it's super important to stay connected, understand every aspect of the business, and be present.
It's a tough balance, between being sort of a multitasker and having a finger in all piles, and then also being a little obsessive in the way that you run your business, which I think it could be a good thing.
I think it depends. Are you more retail? Are you more wholesale? Are you more something that's feeding other businesses, or are you in the consumer space? And I think that's a very large distinguishing factor, whether you're physically present and involved in everything or not.
We're going to talk about SACO Technologies with Jonathan Labbée in a second, about his travels all around the world, about the incredible lighting displays that he's done for clients around the world, including here in Montreal. So Jonathan is on the way. And later we're going to talk about HR talent and how to retain them and how to acquire them. That's all coming up this evening on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you on today's Entrepreneur. And this evening we're chatting with Jonathan Labbée of SACO Technologies. Welcome to CJD, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
And Josh, an incredible business. I mean, just the headlines alone from the website. I was checking this out. The tallest screen on the planet. A credit to their name for this project in Dubai.
Almost 800 meters, 770, I believe, is the number of meters of the screen on an over 800 meter building. But that is not the only thing that they do, although it's probably one of their more well-known things. So the very first question tonight, as we ask each week, we'll turn to you, Jonathan, and say, what is SACO Technologies? Well,
SACO Technologies is basically a company that creates, I would say, unique and innovative media solutions, right? But mainly LED. So video displays, LED video lighting, and that ends up being on rock concerts like Madonna or Lady Gaga or anybody else that you guys may think or have been seeing anywhere at an arena or stadium, and of course buildings like Burj Khalifa.
So really, LED lighting where any consumer individual can see, that's where you guys shine.
That is correct.
Now let's take it back X number of years or decades. Where did this company, where did SACO start? And where did you start with SACO?
Yeah, okay. So let me take you just very quickly through a timeline. So it started in 1987 with two brothers, the Jalbou brothers, Fred and Bassam, who are still our partners today, so the original founders. And they started SACO back then. And SACO basically stands for Systems Automation Control. And they were specializing in basically revolutionizing the industrial control panel and nuclear industry. All right, so nothing to do with what we do today. But in these,
so that whole panel where the people turn the keys and push the button,
yep,
that's what they were specializing in?
Exactly. Now in these panels, which oftentimes are hundreds of feet long, there's like these thousands of indicator lights and push buttons that was using traditional lamps. And this is where they started experimenting with LED for reliability and cutting down on maintenance.
That's quite the start. How long ago was that?
87.
87.
Yeah.
Now, when did it ultimately get into the LED? Like, where's the progression of that story next?
Yeah, so when they started experimenting with LED, there was only red and green available, okay? And to make the primary colors, you have red, green, and blue. So in 1992, one of our suppliers, which is still one of our suppliers today, Nichia, they invented the blue LED. And they took these blue LEDs and shipped them to Montreal to these two guys and said, hey, what can you do with this? And they built the very first ever LED video display on the planet. And then fast forward to 1996, we meet U2. By the way, I met these guys around 94.
When did you start at SACO?
Yeah, so I started hanging around 94. I actually got hired probably around 95 or so after they realized that...
After you were hanging around so much, they couldn't get rid of you.
Exactly. But 1996 is really when everything shifted for SACO. We became SACO Technologies then. But essentially, we met the band U2, and they gave us an incredible challenge. Now, they flew to Montreal, and all they saw was this little 1.5 foot by 1.5 foot display that was running still images. And they had asked us, could we do something that's 50 feet tall by 150 feet wide with full video? And of course, we said yes. And that ended up being for their 1997 Pop Mart tour.
It's interesting. You say we said yes, and I don't want to fast forward to everything through the entire life. I'm sure there's a lot going on, but was that a credo? Was that a bit of a culture? Is say yes before you can sometimes actually do it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always like an educated yes, of course.
Yes, no, naturally.
But I mean, part of our culture is definitely innovation, and I think that these two brothers, the culture they put into the company that we've continued to this day, is basically take an idea, break it down, and then see what we can do and explore the edge, right? And once we find the edge, we trim back a little bit to make it feasible. And that edge keeps changing on a day-to-day basis. That's why the projects keep evolving and the technology evolves also.
And there's no pun intended. The edge, you two.
Well, that's a good one.
We're not going there quite so quickly. Were they? Did you work like closely with your customers? I know I'm sure you do always, but you two as the first, I guess, being the edge of technology, just to continue that expression. was it always a close relationship?
Yes, and it's close relationship with pretty much every one of our partners. I mean, and clients. If you can imagine it, it's it's something that's pretty intimate, right? Because basically become like this visual megaphone for these artists. But if you look in permanent installation buildings like Burj Khalifa, I mean, you are their nighttime identity.
You started out the company as something very technical and then became something very creative. Did you have to acquire expertise over the years to become more creative?
Well, we recruited here in Montreal. Obviously, there's a really, really good creative base of talent that has a lot of technology. They're very attracted to technology. So I think that we kind of grew that organically. So we did not acquire any companies.
Now, you're touching on human resources and the people. How many are you today?
76 actually as of today.
76. This was a progression over time, and I know we'll come to the part of the story that we'll come to maybe after the half hour or in the next half hour is going from private to public back to private.
Yes.
But before we get there, just a question of the human resource side and how you look for your talent or what do you look for when people, do you look for skills is obviously very important. Do you look for character and fit?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find them? How does that human resource come into play?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously character and fit is very important. I mean, the skill set's kind of a given, I mean, when you're looking for somebody, especially if you're like placing ads or kind of doing like the traditional HR approach. But we do use a lot of non-traditional HR approaches, meaning if we meet people and we realize that they could have a bit of a talent and then they have a good character for SACO, normally we'll invite them over.
And from a hierarchical level, I mean, are you flatter? Are you more up down? How does that work? What's worked best for you guys?
Yeah, so basically we have two structures in the company, right? We have our control structure, which is all of our accounting and the way that we run the business. But then from an operational point of view, we're very flat. So everybody in the company is basically an expert at something. And when we work on projects, well, you go talk to the different experts within each group, and we operate as a very flat hierarchy.
So when you're using subcontract, because you work throughout the world.
Yes.
This is not a local only. I mean, obviously we're talking about Burj Khalifa. We're talking about artists that have their concerts around the world. How do you then find local talent wherever you go?
Yeah, so depends on the cases. I mean, most of the time we'll send people that supervise the installation. But if we use Burj, for example, because everything's exaggerated, everything's so big and there's so much.
Dubai, everything exaggerated? I don't understand.
Talking about the sizes, obviously. But the fact is that we've become very, very good at putting in management structures, and we can ramp up and ramp down very quickly. So Dubai, for example, we replicated our basically our production shop over in Dubai. So we manufactured all of the technology here in Montreal, but all of the mechanical aspects like the extrusions and the brackets and stuff like that, we would manufacture over in Dubai and do final assembly there, all the testing and everything right near the facility, and then we would ship over there and install.
So the project in Dubai, this is, I believe, the largest building in the world, right? The tallest building in the world right now?
It is, yeah.
Does a project like this intimidate you when you talk to these people and they put this on the table? I mean, this building is almost a kilometer tall. Is there anything that you guys shy away from?
Well, I mean, the building itself, when you're standing in front of it, it's definitely intimidating. So thank God we didn't do the deal at the building.
and it wasn't yourself as installing all the LED lights on the ropes.
Right, but the thing is, though, is that obviously it's an evolution. Right, I mean, we started off doing smaller projects and so on. So I mean, it led us to being able to do the largest and the tallest building in the world. So I mean, we were very well prepared, and we have the right teams for that, and obviously we had brought in the right talent to do the actual install locally.
All right, super interesting work. We're going to keep chatting with Jonathan Labbée of SACO Technologies in a little while. And Josh, later on, we're going to talk about HR issues, as well as bring in Micheline Mayette, our HR consultant, on how to retain and acquire talent here in Montreal. So that is on the way. But first, we have the news here on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Josh Miller. And this evening, we're talking with Jonathan Labbée of SACO Technologies. They are a pioneer in the LED lighting space. They've worked on the tallest building in the world. They've worked for NASDAQ, doing those LED displays down there.
U2, lots of concerts.
U2, just an incredible company. And Jonathan, let's come back and Josh, we shift a bit to the people.
Yeah, we chatted about the people before, but when there's one aspect about their business that is truly inspirational. It's very interesting. I'm sure people have thought about it before as they grow their business. I'll skip to the end. The end is SACO was private, sold to public, and then came back to private. There's definitely a story behind it. We don't have enough time to do it justice. But maybe Jonathan, you can give us a little bit of the highlights of how it kind of got to that public state first.
Yeah, so in 2004, there's a client that we started doing some lighting for. All right, so as we're concentrating on video, we were picking up some lighting clients because LEDs were becoming powerful enough to do that. And one of those clients was LSI Industries out of the U.S., a big white light company doing traditional lamps. So not quite, you would think it's not really a fit, but at the end of the day, they're looking to replace all these lamps with LED, and LED was becoming more and more popular back then. So in 2006, they made an offer to acquire us. Okay, and it was a very nice offer. It was a very good offer. But one of the things that interested the original founders, Fred and Bassam, was the fact that we would be able to put our technology into more people's hands. All right, so that was kind of the clincher of this whole thing. Plus the leadership and the management over at LSI, super nice people. Okay, good clients and all that. So they acquire us in 2006. SACO becomes basically LSI SACO, and is basically the R&D division of LSI Industries. And up until 2011, I think we had converted over 80% of the revenue to LED.
Was it a long process to deal with them?
No, because we already knew them, right? They were already our clients for 2 years. So the fit was really nice. It was a bit different, but we learned a lot and they learned a lot, and it was really good. So fast forward to 2011. 2011, we have bandwidth, over at SACO, and we're now at this point we're all working for LSI. So Fred and I go to the board of directors there, and we say, hey, it'd be interesting to start exporting LSI products into the rest of the world, like Europe and the Middle East, where we have lots of contacts, and obviously there's the whole concert side of the business that we're still heavily involved in.
SACO remains still a separate business, just owned by, or is it all under under one company?
Well, it's under LSI Industries, and then SACO becomes, because we're a Canadian entity, becomes LSI SACO. Okay, and mainly its main focus is developing LED light engines for the U.S. entity. So we go there with that idea, and at the time the economy was not doing so great, right? It was coming out of that kind of mini recession there, and so they wanted to keep their focus on the U.S. market, which is where they were very strong, on the U.S. and Canadian. So we decided to kind of just launch an idea that, how about if we invested our own money, to do this? And that worked out. The board of directors over there was very happy. We were happy. So it took the risk away from them, put the risk on us, but at the same time, we then kind of gained some freedom there. And our building in Montreal, which we've been in from the very beginning, kind of splits in two, becomes half of it still LSI SACO, and then we have a company that we called LSI International, or LSII as it was known, which was basically doing what I just mentioned. Fast forward a little bit, all this goes very well, great relationship still with LSI, and then in 2015, the climate became very interesting for us, and an opportunity presented itself where we had the opportunity to buy SACO back, from LSI.
Now, this is something that, like when you say you had an opportunity to buy it back, what is there something that precipitated that? Where they wanted to get out of something, you wanted to get into something?
Yeah, so there was a big shift in their board of directors over there, and they were looking at their businesses, and they're kind of decentralized a lot, and they're looking to consolidate some of that stuff. And obviously, being kind of like the one man out over in Canada, we could see that there was a little bit of this feeling of what do we do with these Canadians? So we went there, and we basically made them an offer, and we would continue developing and pushing some of their ideas, and they accepted. So that was really great.
Went completely back to being private.
completely back to being
Was
private.
it at that time that you, like your involvement there, you became a lot more involved at that point?
Yeah, so basically, like my personal journey there, obviously, I started there like around 94, let's say, unofficially.
As you were hovering around.
As I was hovering around, and obviously participated in the business and became very close with the two brothers,
The founders,
and obviously helped move the business forward. But it's really in 2011 where when we created the new entity LSI International. Then I was a partner. Okay, I was a partner with one of the founders, and then in 2015, the second founder, obviously, was already part of SACO. We all came together and created what SACO is known as today.
What are your thoughts on the benefits of tech companies in particular being public or private? And do you find that it was more helpful to your innovation to be private?
It's an interesting question. I mean, we learned so much from LSI. We learned, for example, and I know this may be not like the public or private question, but the fact is that this company was extremely good at manufacturing the same thing over and over again, right? Quality control, and all that. So we learned a lot from that. I mean, obviously, there's all of these other aspects that come into play when you're public. But I do have to say one thing. I was mentioning about our control structure. Fred always insisted that the company be ran as a public company. So SACO from the very beginning was run that way. Get audited every year, and all of our procedures are in place. So the shift wasn't dramatic for us, and the shift back wasn't dramatic either.
We've talked very briefly about SACO being all over the world. You've had projects all over the world. Is there a country that's easiest or hardest to do business in or with?
Yeah, I mean, every country has its own challenges. I mean, sometimes it's logistics, sometimes it's just getting there. But it really comes down to the clients. I mean, we see a lot of similarities between different clients in different countries. So no, I wouldn't say that one country stands out in particular.
Protecting your intellectual property, is that an issue?
Well, yes. I mean, it's always a concern. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to say that it's really an issue. I mean, we're kind of like on the tip of that technology sword, right? So we of course have patents and stuff like that, but we also do a lot of stuff under trade secrets, and we always have 2 or 3 generations ahead in our lab. So when someone comes up with something similar, we just bring out the new toy.
And quickly, just before we go move on to the next segment, and we're going to talk about kind of tomorrow's workplace today and the culture. Is there a culture at SACO that the founders or you kind of embody and what maybe attracts people or really drives your business?
Yeah, definitely. I think that SACO is really a place where everybody's allowed to express themselves. And it's one of the biggest attractors. I mean, we were talking about skill sets earlier, but I mean, that's really one of the things that we look at. But what we're really interested in is everything else that person can do. And how does that mesh with the other people that have other things they can do? And we create that kind of environment where you can do that, you can express yourself. And we can see that. I mean, I can walk on any project and see, I remember when that person came up with that idea. Hey, this guy came up with this, or this girl came up with that idea. And that's what it is. I mean, SACO is a collection of really talented people.
And if I read between the lines, and we spoke about it a little off air, part of your culture is we want to make a difference.
Absolutely.
So that's where it all stems from, and we're going to continue that conversation in just a moment.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you. And we have Jonathan Labbée with us of SACO Technologies. We'll have his one piece of advice for today's Entrepreneur coming up in a few minutes. But first, we welcome back FL HR advisor Micheline Mayette to the program. Welcome back, Micheline.
Hi, Dan.
So talent retention and acquisition. We'll get there in a second. But first, let's give a quick shout out to the event coming up on Thursday, Josh, at JMSB, the John Molson School of Business at Concordia. So you folks are hosting this. It's all day long. It's a conference called Tomorrow's Workplace Today, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. the whole day, including meals. What are you going to be teaching entrepreneurs?
And we are collaborating with a couple of other human resource people and culture professionals. So it's a great collaborative event, and it's not just about talent acquisition. I think that's a great byproduct, but it's really about culture. It's really about the workplace environment. It's really about not being in the 60s, but being in the almost 2020s. And I think that's really the concept and stuff that I'd like to talk about with Michelin today is. And Michelin, you've been in this domain, in this industry, in this sector for a long time. There's been lots of changes, but what do you see as conceptually changing or required and challenges for entrepreneurs as they look at their tomorrow's workplace today?
I'd say the main thing that's changing is really people's values. And I think that's what it boils down to at this event. And I think that's why, it's easy to look very superficially at how the workplace is changing. So you can talk about, okay, we have foosball tables and, we have a wellness program and this type of thing, but it could be very superficial. So we're really looking at people's values. That's really what's changed, and how every work environment is a little bit different. So every industry is going to be a bit different. And that's why we've made this event very experiential. So everybody's going to be coming at it from a different perspective. So people are there to learn from each other and look and see, so how is the workplace changing and what impact is this going to have on my particular business?
And like you say, every different sector, every different business, not everybody's a tech company, not everybody's a professional company, not everybody's a manufacturer. It's all different. But so they do kind of will relate to themselves, but there must be some common themes.
For sure. So, I mean, if you look at, the up and coming, even the current workforce, but really even more so the up and coming workforce, people are really value.
We're talking about
things
generations.
like,
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about generations a little bit, but I mean, it's not like you have Generation X at a certain date and everybody else after is a millennial.
It
there's
blends.
there's a certain blend, you could say. We'll talk more about a tendency, I would say, within society at large. But you can talk about people wanting to feel that they're part of something bigger than themselves, so a community. People wanting to participate in something, a more human aspect to the work environment. So when we look at doing something like, let's say, flexible work schedules, something very basic like that, really what we're trying to do is personalize a little bit the work schedule to different people. So one thing that we can see more and more with the up and coming generation is that they don't like rules just for the sake of having rules. So it's really re-looking at the way that we run our business and the way that we adapt our workplace to these needs to see, do we really need to have all these rules, or can we have a more human workplace that is adapted as much as possible? So it's really, I think one of the types of resistance that we're seeing is a lot of people will come at it saying, this is the whole list of reasons why this won't work for us. Whereas people really have to be thinking of, what can we do to make this work?
Jonathan, you're nodding your head a little bit, so you're in agreement with some of it. I know we spoke a little bit or very briefly about the culture at SACO, and everybody sharing, but what is your reaction to Michelin's comments?
Yeah, no, I actually agree 100%. I mean, we've seen throughout the years a big shift in how, and not only in how we hire people, but what matters to employees and people that work. And I can speak on behalf of SACO. I mean, we've always been a bit different in any case, simply because different time zones that we work in and so on and so forth. But the truth is that we're more interested in the productivity than the amount of hours, for example. So we're pretty flexible. People have stuff that they need to do, but as long as their work gets done, and if they can feel like they're participating in something and they're accomplishing something, and that becomes tangible to them, we've noticed a huge spike in productivity there.
Is that, Michelin, when we think of that tomorrow's workplace today, is it being less of a helicopter owner, kind of a helicopter parent? Is it really letting the people express themselves? Is it really kind of delegating? Like where do you see that as a growth aspect for the people or the talent that entrepreneurs work with?
Again, I don't think it's in a one-size-fits-all rule. I think people are looking for meaning in their work and for things to be pertinent. So I think it's a little bit, I think it's different for every type of business. But yeah, I would say, the typical picture of the autocratic boss, the dictator who tells everybody what to do. I think people like to be in an environment where they do feel that they have a voice and that they can participate in the success of the building, of the business.
Is there a direct correlation to talent acquisition and retention? Is there a direct correlation to hiring and keeping people based on this culture, based on this environment?
I always say you get the employees that you deserve. So you can have a certain style, but you're not always going to necessarily attract the best talent. So Carolyn, who's been working on me with the conference, keeps quoting the president of Apple, which of course his name's escaping me right
Tim
now.
Cook.
Yes,
Tim Cook,
exactly.
Not
Who
the
said,
late president.
yeah, you don't hire the brightest people just to tell them what to do all the time.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. I think, if you want to run your business that way, well, you're going to end up getting talent that likes to be told what to do all the time. So if you want people who can think for themselves and be creative, well, then you need to foster an environment that's going to attract and retain that type of person.
And I think we've kind of heard a little bit of that from SACO and your people. And whether you're searching for more talent or not, it sounds like you've kind of embodied that experience as well.
We are. Do call us.
Thank you so much, Michelin. Thank you. I know it's a topic we could talk about forever. But go tomorrowsworkplacetoday.ca. Go check it out. Join us on Thursday. It's an all-day workshop. Come learn. Come be part of the change and make the best of your workplace tomorrow. Thanks very much, Michelin.
Don't forget to register on the website, by the way, tomorrowsworkplacetoday.ca. And there's still some spots available, so it's all day on Thursday. You must register.
And as we approach the last Motor Hour show each week, we'll turn to Jonathan Labbée of SACO and ask you, Jonathan, what would be your one or maybe two pieces of advice for today's entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'll give you two because I think that they're equally important. The first one is suppliers should be treated as customers. One of the reasons why we have a lot of success and we're able to deliver projects like Burj Khalifa is because our suppliers are willing to do backflips for us, and that's because we've created this type of relationship with them and always treated them the right way. And my second piece of advice would be actually to Michelin's point: you should hire the very best talent that you can afford.
Excellent. Thank you. I think relationships is always underplayed, but not lost. And those relationships are huge in helping any business. We talk about business karma. That's what goes around comes around.
All right. Thanks very much to Jonathan Labbée, and thanks to Micheline Mayette as well at FL.
You.
Thanks, guys.
We're back in 2 weeks, Josh. 2
Correct.
weeks from now. And we're going to talk marketing with the group from the Sunday Collective. Don't forget today's entrepreneur.org for 10 years worth of entrepreneur profiles. And check it out there. We'll see you back here in 2 Mondays from now.